Good morning, everyone, and welcome to SHIO. I am Fran Moisa, a headhunter and talent advisor, broadcasting live from beautiful Malta. And today, my guest on the broadcast is Karl Grech, a successful coach, mentor, and trainer based also in Malta, but who has worked throughout Europe. And today, we're going to be talking about business communication and employee engagement. So without any further ado, I would like to welcome this morning Karl. Karl, thank you for joining us. Good morning.
Thank you, Fran. Thank you for the invitation. Good morning to you.
Lovely having you here, Karl. So, Karl, tell us a bit about yourself. Who is Karl Grech?
Sure. My background started mostly in the hospitality industry, where I started initially from part-time positions, and I studied in the hotel school here in Malta. After that, I worked a little bit overseas as well and locally, mostly within hotels and the catering establishments. Moving on from there, my career took a different path. I decided to move into the training and HR area with special focus to training. Always an area which I really loved. Although I am an introvert, but I have changed and developed over time, and I have become more of an extrovert. So over the years, I have delivered training and coaching, and this is something which I really love. And just earlier this year, I decided to launch my own business, offering training and coaching specifically in areas focusing mostly on leadership. Thank you very much, Fran.
Congratulations. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Karl, you work with several methodologies when you are coaching and mentoring people. Could you tell us a little bit about that as well?
Sure. So from the aspect of training, especially since I've welcomed my own kids, I've decided that I needed to have more fun at work. So I've put an element of fun at work, and I've included an element of Lego serious play. Lego serious play is actually building with Lego blocks. So you build with Lego blocks, and through Lego blocks, you relate a story. Whilst it's playing and having fun, at the same time, it's serious. Okay, so we're having so to call it serious fun, if you like. So it's telling your story, and in this way, it involves everybody. So everybody gets to build, everybody gets to tell their story, of course, always related to the topic we have in question. Then I use Prism. Prism is a tool which is based on neuroscience. Prism is used to get to know a bit more about yourself, your behaviors, and through Prism, you can identify why you maybe react in a certain way. What are your strengths? What are areas perhaps which are not predominantly your strengths, which you could decide you want to focus a little bit more and improve, or it could be knowing and being aware of this and saying, okay, these are my strengths and I don't need to focus on these. Let me keep to focus on my strengths. It also shows to what extent it is a strength. So when you have a strength, it can potentially also become your weakness. If you overdo it, and in certain situations when we could be stressed, we could have different circumstances, we could overdo our strengths, and that could come back to, so to say, to haunt us, because it is then working on our weaknesses.
Absolutely, I agree with that. There is a balance to be had in everything, and by sometimes overplaying our hand, and I think we can all relate to that to some extent or another. It can work in our detriment, sort of speak. And Karl, you've worked with a variety of businesses, as you've said. You started in the hospitality industry, but then you moved and you worked with businesses from so many different sectors, corporate and so on and so forth. In your experience, why is training important?
A very good question. And of course, we hear a lot about training and should we be doing training at this time or not. I feel training is very important based on identifying the right ways of learning. Everybody learns differently. Some people like to read and they would learn through reading. Others would attend an online course or prefer the training, or also a coaching approach. I definitely believe that we learn mostly by doing. So I believe a lot in the learning by doing aspect of training. So even when it comes to training or development that I would deliver or support or facilitate, or even coaching. If we do not get to practice and do the things ourselves, then we will not increase, so to say, our performance and our productivity and be able to do them. The brain works in quite an interesting way. So it works on pathways. So we always have these pathways, and when we were kids, we had the most pathways. So when we're 3 years of age, but then slowly we start losing these pathways. And it doesn't mean because we lose them, we forget them forever. It's just like riding a bike. You know, you might have learned how to ride a bike when you were maybe in your early years, in 10, 20, 10, 15, whatever years old. Then you don't ride a bike, and then an opportunity comes and you need to ride a bike. At the beginning, it can be daunting, it can be difficult, but then you ride on a bike and you realize that you can do it just like you did it, 20, 30 years ago when you were much younger. So it's just like this way, our brain then connects these points. And this is why training and learning is very important, because whilst we might not have habits, we can create these habits. And then again, if we do have habits which we want to change or eliminate completely, we can as well remove these habits with an element of practice and insistence as well, of course.
And could you give us perhaps an example that you came across in your career as a trainer, where through training and coaching, the business ended up in being in a better position than to what they started, and how that impacted the business's bottom line?
Sure. One particular story comes to mind based on your question, and this was a finance IT-based company based in Malta, but with an international reach. This company was experiencing a lot of high turnover, demotivated employees who weren't interested in working and supporting the organization, so to say. And the employees were also blaming their managers. My manager does this, my manager does that. This is what we were seeing. So what we did was we went into the business and we supported the people within the company. So we trained, I believe, at the time, over 200 employees. Wow. By supporting them in an element of time management. So being able to understand what time management is, what are their priorities, where to focus on. We also focused on an element of managing upwards. So how can I support my manager? How can I also pass on the message to my manager and come across towards my manager rather than just nodding my head when my manager asks me to do something, or nodding my head in front of him and then doing something else afterwards. And also trying to set a vision. So helping them see that they have an influence in the vision for the future of the company. They can do something about it. And if we all pull together and we all have and share the same vision, then it's likely that we'll all be pulling the same rope. So after this training, what we noticed that level of engagement of the team members increased. Also, they reduced the number of turnover of employees as well. There was an element of fun, so they realized that at work, it's not just work, we can also have fun and support each other. And also a positive thing was that within the training, there was a mix of people from different departments. And that, because what I didn't mention, there was a bit of a silo effect previously. So in doing this, we managed to create more of a teamwork with other teams. So people mixing and matching each other. Some people had said, I know you, you've been here so many years and we've been together, but we didn't really know each other, And also through an element of play, having fun and learning as well. They got to know each other and they built this bond in their future of work, so to say, in supporting each other in projects that they had to do together. So whereas they would just send an email previously, they would now get off their desk and go to the office and say hello to their colleague and
talk
there and then,
build.
So there was a building of relationships as well.
That's
so
very
there was a good turnout from this particular training we did.
Fantastic. So you've mentioned that they've reduced the turnover, which obviously, that has an impact onto a business's bottom line by retaining employees and addressing issues and challenges as they arise. They give a business and a leader the opportunity to be prepared for those obstacles and manage them along the way, rather than be hit with them, so to speak, as they occur. But we live now sort of in this situation, and I think that, okay, to some extent, the subject of, remote work and everything has been, a bit saturated, you see it everywhere. But for the benefit of our audience, which I think is something very important, and this is certainly a question that I have in my mind, if I was to do training, is remote training effective? You're not there in the same room with the person. You can't, look at them. Well, you can, but it's not the same. You're not face to face. Does it work in your experience, Karl?
If I were to speak for myself, also as a learner, because whilst I do training, I also need to learn. And in this current situation, I am learning a lot, quite a steep learning curve, as well, where my business was a face-to-face business. Now I'm trying to shift on a more digital business. It's identifying the right training and the right approach to do. There's lots of excellent online training, whereas maybe if you were to ask me this question 10 years ago, I would really have hated the aspect of learning online, etc., because the experience wasn't so good. But nowadays there's excellent, there's lots of more technology than there was 10 years ago. There's more support, there are more tools. And then again, it's a matter of taking action. So yes, you learn, you take the input, so to say, of the information, but it's also putting in practice. So in a way, there's also an overload of information as well, and overload to learn, and sometimes you realize, wow, there's so much to learn. So it's also what the benefit of the online learning as well is, take it in bite-sized pieces rather than one day at a time. It could be half an hour at a time, 20 minutes at a time. So that adds a lot of benefit, I think. Even being able to choose your best way of learning. So we mentioned you can learn online, but you can also learn through coaching, through support. So whether you engage as a company an external coach, or you have internal coaches and have a buddy-buddy system, and people support each other. So this might be the person who is an expert in this area. So any support you need in this particular area, reach out to this person. Definitely people always want to feel an element of inclusion. So, and this comes back to our topic earlier, we mentioned the employee engagement, etc. If people feel included, they are more likely to engage more and to be involved. And then again, when it comes to taking on different work, and so whilst we might be doing similar work we're doing, it might be that we might need to shift to do different type of work. So if I am included, if I show and I get the opportunity to say, what are my difficulties, where I'm finding it hard, what is keeping me back from doing this, then it's likely also that I get more support. So definitely keeping this open link with manager, employee, whether it is the manager and the direct supervisor or colleagues, and this is how we can definitely support each other in this time. So there are different ways we could learn. There's the online learning virtual, there's webinars, there are various tools available, lots of technology as well, lots of books and all sorts of things. And it's identifying what is best for you. Now, again, sometimes what's best for us is not always possible, so we need to adjust as well. So have you heard of the word VOCA?
No.
Volatile? No. VOCA was a word which came up mostly in the military aspect. And this is something which I can see quite a lot happening, especially today. So V is for volatile, U is for uncertainty, so a lot of uncertainty. C is for complexity, and A is for ambiguity. And this is what we have a lot of, a lot of ambiguity, a lot of complexity in this current situation. So we need to be able to adapt to the situation. We're going through a lot of change at the moment, and change not for the change's sake, change because it has in a way been imposed of us. But of course, with change, there's always a lot of opportunity to learn, opportunity to develop, to be better than we were yesterday. So we definitely need to embrace this change and make the most of this. The the easier and the quicker we can embrace this change, as hard as it can be, and I'm not saying that this is easy times, it is more likely that we're going to be able to get past this and also create an opportunity for us in the future as well, whether it is within our current business, improve, or anything else.
Absolutely, absolutely. I agree with you, Karl. It's all about filtering through the various tools that we have at our disposal, either as businesses or as leaders, and identify what is important for the organization and how to implement that in order to assist everyone involved within the business or within the team to overcome whatever challenges there may be, whether it's this particular scenario or it could be any other adverse or unusual circumstance. Which kind of leads me a little bit to my next question, communicating effectively. How can leaders ensure that they communicate effectively with their teams? And any tips that you can share that will help them improve that communication with their team, especially in adverse circumstances?
Sure. So we definitely already mentioned the aspect of being open and having an open relationship and creating that element of trust. Every individual, every employee is unique. They will have different ways of even overcoming the situation or dealing with work in the situation, as well, keeping in mind that if people are working from home, their circumstances could be different. Some people are caring for kids, some people could be caring for their elderly, some people could be caring for someone close to them who perhaps might even have lost their job. So we need to adapt to the individual and identify what is doing this. And we can do this through empathy. So definitely being empathic, having an element of empathic listening. So listening to what is this person going through? What are the difficulties of this person? Another way is also being open to feedback. Feedback goes two-way, not only towards the employee, but also to us as leaders. So being able to ask for that feedback, receive that feedback, and then it is, of course, up to us how we deal with that feedback. And feedback could be on anything. It could be how we're dealing with the situation, how we're dealing with work, how we're delegating work. Also, it's creating an element of ownership and responsibility. So how can I ensure that, and this is something which I hear a lot, how can I make sure that my colleagues out of the office are working, they're delivering their work, etc. How can I do this? I think we had a discussion at some point as well.
Yes.
About how do I make sure that my team members, and you mentioned a story about companies potentially that they're taking photos of their employees whilst at work.
Yes, I don't know if that's true, but if it is, it's a bit, wow, this is what Karl was referring to earlier before we went live. An article came up on my newsfeed that when working remotely, there is this company, who takes like every 5 minutes or something like that, photos of people working remotely, which I found a bit strange.
It's very scary, yes.
Very scary, indeed.
So it's creating this mutual accountability. So being accountable to each other. So it could also be, as a leader, I will ask my colleague, we need to do this piece of work. By when do you think you can have it ready? Okay. Now, potentially, we can then even try to argue. So the person says, I can have it ready by tomorrow, but then you need it ready by today. So, okay, what would it take you to have it ready by today? And having this honest conversation, and maybe it's also aligning priorities, so that employee had some priorities in mind, which potentially might not have been the top priorities that need to be handled. So here we realign our priorities and find, okay, then let's focus on this. A few years ago in a company, we had done this program. It's a Franklin Covey program. It's called 4 Disciplines of Execution. It's an excellent program. And what we had done was every department used to meet on a weekly basis, saying that this week I'm going to focus on this. So every individual team member says what they're going to focus on, ensuring that this is going to help us to achieve our goal. The week after, then we will also ask, did you do this? How did you find it? Potentially, there might have been weeks that have been challenging and we might not have done what we said we're going to do. But then we would ask questions like, okay, not putting that person in an uncomfortable situation unnecessarily, of course. And so why didn't you manage to do it? What came in your way? Do you need any help? How can we support you? What can we do to, help you to get it done? And you need, and in that way, we're all focusing on ensuring that we achieve what we set to achieve. So this is focusing on responsibility, ownership of our work, being accountable to our work. So always asking and supporting that individual. Definitely, there's the element of influence as well. So leading by example. If we made promises as leaders, we need to keep our promises, because if I said I'm going to give you this information which you need to do this report and I didn't give it to you, then potentially I'm also have my finger in the pudding that I didn't support you to get this done, so to say. And I'm not saying that team members shouldn't ensure and ask their manager, if they needed some information, they should ask as well. Yes, it goes two ways. But if I promise something, I should make sure I also do it, and I shouldn't wait for my colleague to ask for it. Getting back to individuals, if someone asks us something, they need some information, so getting back to them as well. So these are all ways of how we can ensure that we align our communication, ensure that we keep the right communication, and keeping it consistent. I don't wait for a number of days or weeks to call you and get in touch. Of course, finding out what is the best way to get in touch. Should I call you? Should we WhatsApp? Should we use any form of media? So some people are not comfortable face to face, sort of in the virtual environment, so to say. So if it's not necessary to do it, then we don't. But then again, sometimes it's good to see a face to face. Whilst some people are very good at hiding their expression, whether good or bad, it's always very helpful to see that approach.
The reaction and
the reactions, because here you can pick. That's right. You can pick on certain aspects.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, we are all different in the way that we communicate. We are different all in the way that we absorb and perceive information. Any tips that you can share with our audience in sort of tailoring our way of communicating that has the most impact upon, whoever the audience would be?
Sure. Whilst there are many different communication styles, not recently, but I came across the social styles, communication style, which is a very interesting, so to say, tip. And if you like, we can share this, so to say, worksheet later with the audience.
Yes.
So what social styles is it puts, whilst I don't like to say that we're put in boxes, it puts us in a bit of a box, okay? And let's call this a flexible box, because then again, depending on the situation, we would tend to change. But let me tell you a bit more before I get into too much detail. So what social styles is, it puts us in 4 different boxes. So one box is what we call the analytical. So analytical is someone who would need information before they take a decision, for example, okay? They have the need to be right, okay? So their need, so down there is that they need to be right. So in order for them to be right, they need to have all the information before they take any decision. The next area is a driver. A driver would be someone who, no matter what, would like to achieve their goals. So sometimes this person would not focus on the interaction, on listening to the person, but let's get on with it. Let's do it. Let's, have this project, and in a way bulldoze through the project. And so I think it's very important that I say this. There's no right or wrong communication style, but it's being aware of ourselves and knowing ourselves more. Because if we do this, then we can react to different people. There is what we call the amiable. The amiable is a person who is very friendly, very careful, making sure that everything is right around them, and they would feel uncomfortable with an element of change or having someone just pull the carpet out from under their feet, so to say, So if you're going to create an element of change, you would need to explain why you're doing this change, what's happening, and why is this happening. They might also keep back from taking a decision because it might affect someone, and because they don't want that person to hurt, then they would keep back from taking a decision. And then we have the expressive. The expressive are people who are, I like to call them the huggers, the people who are very friendly. They would take decisions pretty much spontaneously as well. They'd get their paycheck and say, okay, I've booked a holiday to Hawaii, I've done this, I've done that, And And the expressive would require approval. So this would be their needs. So they need to say, they need someone to tell them, yes, go ahead, you can do it. You're capable of this. And a
Reassurance.
little bit of reassurance, correct. So it's always good to have a good balance of these people around us. At the same time, it might be harder to come to deal or communicate with people who are different from us. So if I am an amiable and someone is a driver, I might say this guy is, push person. He always gets his way. He doesn't, listen to other people, etc. But it's not necessarily the case. So if I am just there on my own without this person, then possibly work might take long or even forever to do, because I need someone who's a driver to help me and support me. Now, again, having said that, that's right. So that is why I said, although we're putting ourselves in boxes here, we are all very flexible. So there are times when, if I am an amiable, there are times when I need to be a driver, whether because it's of a crisis situation or I have to do something very fast or whatever. There are times when I need to be analytical and I need to make sure that I have enough numbers. But then again, there is a time when you have to say, okay, this is the information I have. I need to take a decision based on this, and you move on.
Absolutely. And would you say it's fair that by managers or leader understanding the different predominant styles, because as you said, no one, is 100%, a certain way or another, but we all have a predominant style of communication. Like, for example, Karl, which one are you?
I'm amiable.
Amiable. So, and I would be a driver, for example. That's why I was laughing when you were saying so. By understanding this, then we can tailor. So if I was to communicate something to you, I would make sure that it makes you comfortable, that I give you reasons as to why we're taking this certain course of action and how it impacts others as well, because that empathy is very important to someone who's amiable and wants to ensure that everyone is on board and happy, and vice versa. And if you were to get me on board with a project, you would say, okay, friend, this is the task, go. So by understanding that, I believe, and unless I am wrong, it will help managers sort of give that empowerment to their team to take ownership of the tasks in a way that is most natural and comfortable for them, so they can produce the best results.
Exactly. And we need to adapt depending on the people we have in front of us, because that is the only thing we can do. We cannot change the person in front of us. That's something out of our control. But I can adapt the way I react to that person. So I have myself been in situations where, uncomfortable situations where this person was speaking a certain way and I felt uncomfortable, and, you feel your blood bubbling, and you start getting nervous about it and maybe upset or angry. But then you say, wait, do I need to get angry about this? If I adapt my style, if I adapt the way I'm communicating to this person, and I have done this, and it's amazing. It's like magic, it's like having a magic wand and changing your style of communication. And by doing this, the person's reaction would change as well. So being aware, just as you said, and whilst we mentioned we can share this worksheet, whilst you can take this worksheet yourself and also share it with your colleague, at the same time, knowing this, just this information, you can even identify without getting the person to do the test that, okay, you can put this person, this is this type of person, this is this type of person. So let me adapt my style to this way, and I will probably reap better results as well.
Yes.
Communicating.
Understanding those and knowing how to spot certain cues that may come up in discussion or in behavior that might give you an indication on how they perceive information. But sometimes a conflict does occur. It's inevitable. Conflict is inevitable at the end of the day, whether we're in the office or working remotely. We cannot escape it. It can be at a smaller scale or at a larger scale, but however, at whatever scale kind of it is, it makes people uncomfortable. So how can leaders and managers handle conflict, whether it's within the team or kind of, in between the manager and the team?
Excellent question. Of course, there are various ways we can speak about, but what I'd like to focus on here is that we need to ensure, and I'm saying this with an element of responsibility, especially because I'm Maltese and we might have predominantly a Maltese audience. As a Maltese audience, we tend to keep back from conflict, we tend to shy away from it, so to say, and keep away from it as much as possible because we think it might resolve eventually, but it doesn't. We need to, I think, I like to see the Dutch way of focusing on conflict, and they would just go head on to it, and deal with the situation. So definitely, especially in these times, whilst it is very easy to shy away and keep away from conflict because we're not in the office, we're not facing each other, let's try to deal with the situation. So definitely finding out what is the conflict about, asking questions here again, we need to use the empathic listening. So listening most empathically, listening to the person, and focusing on what is being said. Sometimes it could be that we were misunderstood. We said something, but this person understood us in a totally different way. And this is quite normal as well because of the situation, we're not face to face. We're not, so to say, meeting in a way, and we're trying to find the best way we can to explain ourselves. And sometimes with limited time as well, limited opportunities to discuss this. So definitely,
especially writing, as you've mentioned, when we type with someone, you can't convey tone, you can't convey facial expression, so it may be perceived sometimes in a different way that was intended.
And it could also be that you might think there's a conflict and maybe there isn't as well. So because we over analyze this information, so definitely it's important to have an open approach, speaking to the person, trying to identify and maybe being open. So do I understand correctly? Are you angry about anything, or has anything upset you, or is there anything we could do better? Is there any situation maybe you realize there's a conflict with two other individuals and not necessarily yourself and this person? So tell me a bit about it. What has happened? What have you tried? What have you noticed? It's using this coaching approach, so to say, by identifying more on what the situation is, definitely listening to both sides of the story as well. So this person's telling you this, maybe getting the opportunity, of course, not uncovering that this person told me this about you, but saying, is everything okay? How is it going with this person? Are you managing to work together on this particular project? Have you come across any obstacles or situations? Tell me a bit more about it. And what's keeping you back? What can keep you back from achieving your target, so to say?
Yeah.
Okay.
And what advice would you have for perhaps team members, that when, the leader can make an effort, the manager can make an effort and ask them, about certain situation, they observe a change in behavior, in interaction, and they would like to unearth the problem behind it. But sometimes, we can be conflict averse as well, and we just say, oh, everything is fine, it's nothing important, we shy away from expressing. So if you don't tell someone what's bothering you, they will never know. But any tips that you have for individuals that are conflict adverse, how to overcome that, and why is it important to overcome that?
I'll start with the last part, why it is important to overcome that. Definitely, this is a temporary situation where whilst we have embraced working from home and we might continue this to some extent, eventually, the likelihood is at some point or other we're going to get back to the workplace. So if we do not deal with the conflict right away, it's likely that it will come back to haunt us later. And it might be even harder to deal with at a later stage. So definitely, if we notice that there is some, let's call it uncomfort situation, okay, which could be an element of conflict, yeah, let's try to deal with it right away. And this is where I like to think that we are all leaders, whatever our position. You could be at any point of the organization, but you have a leadership role as well there. So let's use this leadership opportunity to tackle the situation right away. And it could happen either by simply speaking up, by opening up to that person. It could be identifying what is the best way to communicate with this person. So how do I need to adapt? Definitely, whilst there are two sides to the story, I believe that I cannot change anyone. I cannot change any individual. I can make them aware of something that might make me uncomfortable and might make me harder to work together with this person. But I cannot change this person. I need to do the change myself. So then again, if you ask the right questions and find out from this person if you manage to do that, what is making that conflict situation, then you could also change as well. But you could also identify, so what have I done wrong? Reflect back, to maybe the past situation. Why do you think this has occurred? And also try and see, how can I adjust my ways of communicating with this person, my ways of dealing with this person, my ways of passing on. Recently, I had a situation where I was coaching this individual, and this person said she had just been promoted in a position, and someone else in that previous position moved on to a different position, but it was still that person's baby, so to say. So that person still had the love for that position that she had, because she had started everything from scratch. So this individual was finding it, let's call her Jane, Jane was finding it difficult to deal with Mary. Mary was the person who now was promoted to a different position, because Mary kept on coming to Jane and telling her, do this in this way, you should do this, don't forget to do this, taking that authoritative approach. And Mary had no reason to do that, because she was not responsible for the employee. So always with respect, what Jane decided to do was speak to Mary, tell her, I appreciate, Mary, your help, your support through this period of passing on this information or of giving me your suggestions, but I have decided to do this in this way, for example, or so this is one way of tackling it. So telling the person that I appreciate your help, I appreciate your support, but this is the way I'm tackling it, or I appreciate your support and thank you for giving me this feedback, but I will see what I'm going to do about it, Mm-hmm. Everybody wants to feel included, I think we mentioned it, but everybody also wants to feel significant. Nobody wants to feel that they're being ignored or abandoned. Yes. So giving that person the importance, I think, is going to help in an element of conflict situation and improving the response. Trying to find ways of how can we, because it could be that that person is reacting in this way because of maybe another instant whatsoever, which has nothing to do to work. It's maybe something to do with her private life. So identifying and finding ways of how can we open up together. And could this person tell me a bit more? Could I get the opportunity to learn a bit more about this person, what difficulties this person is going through? And perhaps this person is having late nights because they have to deal with this, or very early mornings because of a different situation. So saying, how can we support each other? How can we be more supportive together? Something which I've seen a lot, and I think that this might help, is creating a community aspect at the place of work. So either by sharing information, by celebrating success. Whilst it's hard to think that we might have successes, I'm sure we do have daily successes as well. So looking at what are our successes and celebrating these, and also having fun. I've seen pictures on social media of companies having Friday drinks together on a virtual setting, and dressing up in different ways, in funny ways, or even creating videos in a virtual setting, So these are all ways, I think, which will help us to confront conflict, but also try to avoid it as well, whenever possible.
And I think, all the suggestions that you've mentioned are definitely fantastic, and they make perfect sense, especially when, we work closely with the team and we are in a small team. But what happens when there is quite a large team? It may be a bit more difficult than for a leader to have that personal connection with every team member. The numbers, the logistics of it would not support that sort of personal interaction. So what can leaders and managers that are managing, large teams can do to still achieve this effective communication and employee engagement?
This is a brilliant question. I love it. And it's very, very valid in this current situation, because we're going through so much change. And change, perhaps I could describe a little bit the SARA curve on change, where the SARA curve focuses on, initially we get through the shock. So first, S for shock, we create a shock and we panic, what's happening, this cannot be happening, etc. We get angry then, so that's the A. Why me? Why has this happened? Why is this happening to us all? Why are we in this situation? So there's an element of resistance, which is the R, I want things to be back as normal. I want to be things as they were before, and then slowly we start accepting. We realize that this is a situation, and we've now been in it for now over 2 months, but it could create other opportunities. It could create an opportunity for me to learn new things, do different type of work, maybe work I enjoy more as well, working in a way remotely to a certain extent in my own time as well. So perhaps I feel very good at working in the morning, so I can work well in the morning. Or it could be the other way around. I can be flexible and work in the evening because I feel that I can give my utmost through working through the evening. And then reaching our success. So there's the element of healing aspect. So we realize and we look back, and so that's the H in Sarah, where, okay, it wasn't as bad after all, we've come through this and we have successes, we've achieved more than we thought we would achieve, and maybe we surpassed even our results if possible. Yes, why not? And through change, whilst some change is planned, so in planned change, sometimes our leaders, our managers, our CEOs might have thought of this much before. It comes down to the lower level, so to say. And this brings us to the concept of the marathon effect. This marathon effect is, in New York, for example, in the New York Marathon, there are over 20,000 runners. Now imagine 20,000 runners at the starting point, okay, all ready to start when, the guy says go, and he shoots the bullet and people go. So the likelihood is that there are, and not only the likelihood, the actual situation, not all 20,000 are going to start at the same time. It's likely there's going to be a lot of time that will pass before the people at the very back, who are usually not the athletes, will get to go through start. And sometimes not only minutes, I think there are an element of hours as well that will pass by. And in a marathon, I've done a full marathon myself a few years ago, and it was a great learning experience. Thank you. So I can associate quite a lot with this. So in a marathon, there's a lot of the mental game. Okay, so when we run a marathon, mentally and not only physically, we need to be prepared. And there comes a stage when I came across this stage myself as well, halfway through, and I realized, wow, this is hitting me. I started the race with a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm. I pushed too hard at the beginning, and then you kind of block yourself halfway through and you say, oh no, I don't have enough energy to go through all this. So what we need to do as leaders is we should first of all identify other individuals within the teams who can support us. So who are our possibly next in line, other potential people within the team who can potentially be leaders as well and support us. So first of all, we are passing on a message, and we will do this both through webinars, whatever, so visually and vocally, but we could also do this through different media. It could be we send emails, we could have an internal newsletter, etc., where we're passing on information. So this is one way we're keeping the information going from our own desk, so to say. But then we have these other people who are supporting us. Very important that they're passing on the same message. And showing everybody that we can do it together, so to say, being cheerleaders, along the way, along the route, and supporting individuals. So whilst the CEO, managers, etc., have gone past start, have run the race and possibly even finished, we have people who are starting and maybe at the beginning of the race. So these people need that constant support, constant push, that you can do it. Let's get to this together, At the end of the day, we're one team, We're not individuals. We cannot run the race on our own. We need to run the race all together and stick together and keep together. So pulling all the same rope and ensuring that we all get there. So it's identifying these individuals who are there to support us and pull as well the same rope, okay? Because as individuals, we always need a lot of constant messaging, passing on the same message, so we get to appreciate where we're going and what we need to focus on. There was a story, I don't know if you've heard of it, when John F. Kennedy went to NASA. This was before they reached the moon. But John F. Kennedy had this dream that he wanted to have a man landing on the moon. And when he visited NASA, he was speaking to the employees, to the staff, and he met one of the cleaners there. And he asked the cleaner, what is your role here? And the cleaner told him, we are here to get a person onto the moon. an individual, a man on the moon. He didn't say his job was a cleaner. He said what the mission was, and that is what we need to do as top leaders. Why it is very difficult to pass on the message individually to every team member. We need to ensure that we have a constant messaging system and constant support network by the people around us who are going to push this message, and make sure that we keep on pushing and making sure that we all reach, so to say, the finish line and reach our target, our goal all together.
That's fantastic insight, Karl. Thank you. Thank you for sharing with us.
Welcome.
And I would like to remind our audience that we are nearing the broadcast soon. So if you've got any questions that you would like to ask Karl, you can do so via typing in either Facebook or YouTube, depending on the platform that you are watching us now, and they will come up on the screen. So any questions that you have, now is the time to do it on the comment section. Whilst we give our audience a chance, to get any questions across that they may have, Karl, how would you sort of summarize the importance of building an adaptable and solution-oriented team as a leader?
Okay, great question. So we mentioned earlier the focus on being proactive, and we're focusing on your circle of influence rather than your circle of concern. Circle of concern are things that are around us and they stress us and they keep us back from doing things because we focus on being reactive. But if we focus on a circle of influence, then we're focusing on things that we can do something about. And so being solution-oriented is a way where we could ensure that we're focusing on finding the solution. And this is, again, one very good example where Lego can come into play. So Lego comes into play when we do not have an answer for a particular problem, and we involve everybody to help us to find the answer. So this happens through everybody coming up with their ideas. So while sometimes in a boardroom, now whether it is a physical boardroom or a virtual boardroom, we're all around the table. Sometimes there are some people who are really motivated and they jump in and come up with their solutions and ideas. There are people who keep back. It doesn't mean those people who keep back do not have ideas or solutions, but it could be that they either maybe lack an element of confidence. It could be that they don't feel they have the right to speak for various reasons. It could be they're not given the time to speak. Or it could be they also maybe feel that whatever they say might not be listened to, perhaps, for whatever reason. So Lego brings everybody, so 100% involved, where everybody builds, everybody says their story, and everybody comes up with their idea. And then you identify what are the best ideas, what are the ideas that we could pick onto and reach onto, and then everybody builds even together as well. So being able to listen to everybody around the team, I think, is important to reach that solution-oriented team, because we can have a lot of lip service and saying we're a solution-oriented team, I'm going to listen to you, but if we don't listen to whatever the person has to say, and maybe even question, because maybe that person cannot express themselves, perhaps a way for us to understand them. I'm not saying they don't express themselves, right? But maybe we don't understand what they're saying. There's some statistics saying that we think of about 800 words a minute, but we can only say about 300 words a minute. Okay. There are so many words in our head that we want to say, but we just cannot, so then we get to choose a few words to be able to rate what we have to say. So giving them the time, finding ways where, whether it is listening to them face to face, even in a virtual setting, or giving them the opportunities to come back to us over a period of time again. So whether it is by tonight, give me all your ideas for this, and you need to write maybe a synopsis, a brief about what they have in mind, or various other tools available. But ensuring that we give them the opportunity to do this. And going back to the communication styles, everybody is different. So whilst there are people who are ready to blurt out ideas and have their say right away, there are people who might keep back. So we need to be aware of this and giving them the opportunity and the right platform to do this as well. Because many times it's, so to say, these introverts, these people who do not have their say right away, might be processing the information, coming up with these ideas, which if we don't give them the chance to say it, then we're going to lose out, and we're going to miss out on some brilliant ideas that might even solve problems, or even also save us a lot of finances as well.
Absolutely.
Because at the end of the day, these could all relate to some hefty fees or hefty bills, whatever.
Of course. Everything has an impact, especially in a team situation. If it's cohesive, if it runs well, then it helps a business, with their time to market, with their service, with their product, with the engagement that they have with their target market, but also with the overall sort of atmosphere within the business and the setup that will help individuals, work towards that common goal and achieve those results together as well. We're coming to the end of this broadcast. Karl, thank you ever so much for joining us this morning and sharing with us these insights and tips. I very much enjoyed it. I hope that our audience did as well. We will upload soon some worksheets that you will be able to download from Karl Grech, such as, find out what type of communicator you are. And we would encourage you to, have a look through those, distribute them among your team members, even your family. If you have arguments with your spouse, it does help to understand. I did that and it worked. We again thank you very much, Karl, for your time and your insights.
Thank you, Fran, for having me, and thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.